This is an interview with Mr. Louis G. Burks for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley, who is at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Today is November 4th, 1996. Mr. Burke, Burks, right?
Right.
B-R-K-S.
Right.
Yes, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with us today.
Sure.
What we're trying to do is develop sort of a history of Birmingham and the movement from perspectives of people who were actively involved.
Okay.
Just let me ask you, where are your parents from? Were they originally from Birmingham?
No, they were from Selma,
From Selma.
Dallas County.
And were you born here in Birmingham?
Yes.
Okay. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
We have five sisters.
5 sisters.
No brother.
No brothers. That sounds like my brother-in-law. He had 5 sisters and he's the only boy. So like, where were you in that scheme of things? Were you the oldest?
I'm what they call the baby.
Oh, you were the baby. Oh, so you really caught it then. Yeah. Your mother and father, did they move here after they started having children, or were they here early in life?
Now, I'm really not sure, but my oldest sisters may have been born in Selma, but then I'm not sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the baby, and
Yeah.
I didn't really get into what they were born in.
Okay. How much education did your parents have?
My mother, I think she completed the 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
My father didn't have any school.
What kind of work did they do?
My mother was a presser.
Cleaners?
Right. And my father was worked at Alabama for a product.
Okay.
And
Was he, what, do you know what he did at Alabama Byproducts?
yes, he was what they call a luter.
What's a luter?
It's almost like a bricklayer. It's something out of Alabama Byproduct. It's a sort of a coke plant, and they would after they get through cooking the coke, when they pushed it out and when they get ready back to seal the dough back, he would have some mud where he would seal the dough back up.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was an oven, but he would seal the oven back up.
Some pretty tough work.
Pretty hot.
Pretty hard work. Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever have any aspirations for going and working in that plant?
Yes.
You did.
So that's a story within itself.
That is. Huh?
The reason why I had to do with a little prejudice, the reason why I didn't, let's say I worked out there at one time, and the way that I tell the story, the way that I got the job is an uncle of mine who had, they were supposed when they were going to be off to report off and report back on. So this uncle had done what he's supposed to do, but the supervisor at that time had failed to report it back off, so he took a layoff, which is one of his responsibilities. So as a favor to my uncle, the personnel manager hired me. But I had been trying to get hired at the plant, and the reason why they wouldn't hire me, because my sister had participated in civil rights activity in Tennessee. And it had came out in some paper. And the plant was in Tarrant City. And it had came out in some paper. And they called my daddy into the office and questioned him on my sister's activity while she was a college student at Tennessee State. And so in that, they wouldn't hire me because of my dad and my sister's activity in the civil rights movement. She had been expelled from school from teaching about Nat Turner.
Is that right? And that was in the paper?
It wasn't in the local paper. It was in some paper in Tarrant City.
And they found out about it.
They found out about it.
So they called your father.
Right. And so at that instance, my dad, he tried to give me a job.
Mm.
But when they asked me, when the supervisor asked my uncle what can he do for him? He said to hire his nephew. So I was the last hire. I got laid off 3 times in a month.
Why was you laid off?
Well, they hired me during vacation time, but there are people that got hired with me that are out there even now.
Okay.
But when I got laid off, I was never called back.
Okay. So you were just in that temporarily. And
Well, it was a good paying job. It was a good paying plant. It still is. And I had intentions of, getting involved. And my intention was to work out there one day, save up enough money to go into my own business. But it was always to go into my own business.
So how long have you been barbering?
Let's say I'm 55 and I started about 17. I started cutting hair while at Park High School, what they call diversified occupation, for students who wanted to work while they were in school. And so through the Board of Education and through the Barber Commission, I was allowed to leave school after finishing my major subjects and go to work at Mr. Armstrong Barber Shop. Where I got my training.
Or did you train with Mr. Armstrong?
Right.
Design?
I had my theory at school and my handwork was on the job training.
So you would do that every evening after
Every-
school?
Well, yes.
Let's revert just a bit, and I want to ask you about your early childhood. What neighborhood did you grow up in?
We call it East Birmingham. The people that lived in the area call it Greenwood.
Okay. And what school did you remember your first grade? What school did you start first grade in?
I think they called it Shield School, which later became Alberta Shield.
Alberta Shields, yes, right. What do you remember about your elementary school? Is there anything that stands out in your mind about the days that you spent in elementary school?
Well, the elementary school that I started at was just almost like the house that I was living in. It was an old wooden house, maybe had about 4 or 5 rooms. And the 3rd grade was in the basement of St. Luke Church. But before I got to the 3rd grade, they had built Alberta Shield School, which is standing there today.
So the 1st and 2nd grade were at the school,
At
and then the 3rd grade was at the church.
the church.
What was the 4th grade?
I don't know they had a 4th grade at that time. I don't think they had a 4th grade at that time.
Do you remember any of your teachers?
Yes.
Anybody that had an influence on you, somebody that you liked maybe during that period of your life?
Well, that was later when they had built Alberta Shield. That was Mr. Jones. And Mr. Jones had stated that he knew what student that was, I don't really remember exactly the quote, but maybe who would succeed or not. Later on I looked at that as sort of a motivation thing rather than a put down. I think he really, but then I was a slow student. So I think it made me try to apply myself more.
So that was sort of an activator for you that got you going because you took it as sort of a challenge or something.
I think so.
And after you left Alberta Shield, where did you go?
I went to Park.
Park.
I went to Park Annex.
Right. Okay. Now Park has been touted as being the largest and quote Negro school in the world.
Right.
And a lot of folk there because it was one of the just 2 schools in Birmingham, I guess. What do you remember about Park? Was it that grander place that many people talk about today?
Well, Parker was, the school that, to me, was the school that my sisters had went to, so it meant a lot, coming up behind them. They were most of the guys in the neighborhood, so I was very proud to be a student of Park.
Everybody looked forward to getting to that level, so you could go to parties.
Right.
So that's where you then became a barber, in effect.
Well, actually, what happened? I think I was maybe about in the 11th grade or something like that, and before I had been playing basketball, and I lost my position on the team, and at that point I felt like I said, well, I'm not going on to college. I better make my move toward being a baller.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 12 years of age, I decided I was going to be a baller. But I hadn't decided to make a move toward it until I was in a love sports. Really wasn't in shape. The reason I lost my position on the team, of course, tried to come back out. But at that point, I felt like, well, it's time for me to become a baller. And one of my classmates who was in the University of Occupation told me that they had some barber students in the class, and she was into nursing. We had students in archery tech and a lot of different dry cleaning. So the University of Occupation teacher was Mr. Lewis, who that would be called Lewis's father, which I didn't know at the time. But and I went to him, and he said that the class was filled up. See? So then I was going to try to go to Western Oldham. And when I told him I was going to Western Oldham, he decided that maybe he would,
Open something up for you so you can get in there.
right.
You were in athletics at the time. You played basketball?
I played elementary basketball,
Yeah.
high school.
Played high school? Yeah. Well, Lil Joe would have been there at that time.
Right.
Leandrew May.
Right.
Buck Buchanan.
Right.
They were all on that basketball team.
She was on the
Yeah, Juice Underwood. Yeah, I remember. I was at Winona. That's what I remember. Yeah. Why did you have a desire to become a barber? So you had made that decision when you were 12 years old. What made you make that decision?
Well, as I said, I guess I really forgot that really I wanted to be a history teacher. But I was slow in school, Bob and Salt was my second choice. And so there was a barber shop that I had went to. I think his name was Fred Hudson. And so, Mr. Hudson would get my hair cut, and I said, well, this is a honorable profession, and so I could eventually own my own shop. And so that was my goal, was to own my own business and be independent, not have to ask white folks for this or that.
Well, I became a history teacher, so you didn't have to be smart to be a history teacher.
Well,
So you could have, because I was slow too. Yeah. After you finished high school, then did you go right into barbering?
Well, after finishing high school, I had my, my barber's license, and two other students was in barbering, and one of them asked me, when I want to come and work with him, the shop he was working at, and which I did. And
What shop was that?
There was a shop on Barbara Howard on 4th Avenue and 7th Street.
4th Avenue and 7th Street.
Right. It's no longer there today.
Right.
But I worked there for maybe 6 months or something like that, and I got a job at Magic City Barber Shop.
And where was that located?
Magic City Barber was on 4th Avenue, and it's on 4th Avenue between 17th Street, 17th, 18th Street.
So you moved uptown.
Moved uptown.
Yeah. What was that transition like from out in the community to downtown?
Well, at that particular time, downtown was the center of everything. It was where everybody wanted to be at. Everybody who was, to me, who was kind of known, you had to be known in town. So, I was very proud to be working on 4th Avenue because of all of the nice spots and the restaurants and
All the activity was
all
going
that.
on right in that area.
Right.
So how long were you there in Magic City?
Well, I really wasn't there maybe about 2 or 3 months where it happened. At that particular time, my uncle had did this favor for the supervisor. And as I said, I wanted to save up some money where I could own my own shop. And so they were making much better money at the plant than when I wanted cutting hair. So, which was still my intention to own my own place. So I got hired at the plant. So when I left Magic City Barber Shop, but the job didn't last long. So maybe after I got laid off for the last time at the Alabama Bar Product, I got hired at Sportsman Barber Shop. And at Sportsman Barber Shop, I worked there for about 15 years.
Okay. And where was Sportsman located?
Sportsman Barber Shop was between 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue, 17th Street next, you might say, in the same block with the car theater.
Okay. So you're right back downtown then,
Right downtown.
competing with Magic City.
Right.
Yeah.
The shop was still up when I went back.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you, you stayed there for, so about 15 years?
Right.
Then did you then go into your own place?
Right. Opened up my own shop out in West Street.
And that's where you've been ever since?
Well, I moved from there. As I said, I wanted to own my own business, and there I would, own my own shop, but I didn't own the building.
Right.
So where I'm at now, I own the building. I'm buying the building.
That's it.
So that was the dream.
Yeah.
To own my own.
Yeah. During the time that you spent downtown, this was during the era of segregation, so this was black folks' area.
Right.
This is where we basically found. Can you tell me just a bit about what it was like in that area during those times?
Well, it has a lot to do with, I guess what you're talking about, and what it was like when it comes to just black people's. I felt like that everybody in that time, we had a sense of family. When somebody passed, somebody would go around and pick up money for them. And if somebody that worked in the area passed, and they had their funeral, they would bring them down through that area. Talking the last time. So it was like family. There was an occasion when I was in a spot where some of my friends felt like that I should have been in it. And they told me, you don't need to be in here.
Like where, for instance?
Well, I was in a little bar, and the little bar was kind of a little rough area, And so, but people that know me know that I was out of place, and I know that I was out of place.
So they were basically
people that just care about you.
take care of you.
Right.
And knew that you were out of your environment, so they would sort of help you get back.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of an atmosphere. I felt like that I pretty well know everybody that worked around in that area at the time. There's people who would just be frequently in the place, in the area.
What about entertainment in the area?
The entertainment at that time, mostly, talk about movie theaters, but if you're talking about entertainment of musicians and different things, I don't think there were any of the bars that had, let's see, that was H.T. Ward. He used to have entertainment there in his club. But most of the time we let the city auditorium entertainments came out. But mostly, we had theaters, and that was Carver Theater, that was the Famous Theater, the Frolic Theater, the Champion Theater.
And the Lyric around
Lyric,
18th
right.
Street. Yeah. A lot of restaurants.
Right. And quite a few restaurants. One particular, Brock's, was a real great meeting place. Brock's people meet up there and had this long bar.
And this area really is where people sort of congregate. I remember going to town on Saturdays, Saturday morning, and walking down Fourth Avenue. It was really sort of reminiscent of what I read about Harlem,
Right.
I guess it was the area where we congregated. Yeah. This area also was sort of an area of activity during the Civil Rights Movement.
Right.
And I know that you got involved in that. How did that happen? How did you get involved in the movement?
Well, how did I get involved? At that particular time, I was involved a little before you.
Mm-hmm.
And but during that time when
So talk about the time before we get into the period that you're talking about now.
well, I guess my first involvement was my father took me to the Southern Christian Leadership meeting, and from that point,
At one of the churches.
one of the churches, and so I think that was over in Avondale, church over in Avondale. I believe it was New Hope church over in Avondale.
Do you remember how old you were at the time?
Let's see, probably about 19, 20 or something.
Okay.
And so later, I think I know that was a time when I participated in sort of integrating the buses. Went on to the Shuttleworth House, and so then was to rode the bus to sort of get the people's fear out riding the buses.
But you went to Shuttleworth House?
Yeah, we went to his house.
What did you go to his house?
Well, that's what we, before we started, that's what we met up at. At his house there, which was across from the church. Right. And so that was, only a few of us people who showed up. So we was at his house.
And then from the
We loaded up and got on different buses and went to different parts of the city. And so that was sort of my,
what happened when you got on the bus? Can you describe what took place?
well, one thing that kind of sticks in my mind, I remember that the bus that I rode, we went to Eastlake, and we went to the end of the line in Eastlake, and there was a white man that got on the bus with one leg and on a crutch, and we stood in different places up front where we wasn't, the pads had been allowed to sit in. And this guy wouldn't sit down, and
There were vacant seats.
there were vacant seats, all over the bus. But I guess he was probably standing up for old Dixie, I guess, and it kind of, I kind of admired him in a way for standing up what he believed in, but it was still kind of crazy. The bus, he was rocking and about to fall down on this, But he stood up, he wouldn't sit down.
Did you ever think about getting up and letting him sit down?
Well, and they need to get up. There were a lot of empty seats. It wasn't seats the reason he wasn't sitting down.
Okay. It wasn't the seats, it was the person.
It was probably felt like that he would be probably, I looked at it, he felt that he would be belittling himself to sit on the side. A Negro at the time, we were calling ourselves Negro.
Right.
Colored people.
That's right. Were you, the bus driver didn't ask you to move, to give up your seat or anything of that nature?
Now there have been times when the bus driver have asked me to do that, but he didn't do it at that time.
Well, when they asked you on the times that did happen, did you get up and give the seat?
No, I didn't. That was I used to caddy, and at this particular time, I was out in Homewood, caddy at that stage at the country club. Had gotten a ride down the mountain to Homewood, and so I had gotten on the bus going to East Birmingham from Homewood. And when I got on the bus, so it was long seat up front, I had, sort of, I had got to the point where I just couldn't go to the back of the bus no more. I was still afraid, but I just couldn't go to the back of the bus. And the bus driver asked me and my friend to go to the back of the bus. I said, I can't go back there. And I had an article in my vehicle about the law had passed that we could ride where we wanted on the bus, so I know I was within the law, But so the bus driver, he still asked me to go to the back, and the police department, they were pretty oppressive, so I was afraid, but I couldn't go to the back.
Why couldn't you go to the back?
Well, I don't know whether it's pride or whatever, I just couldn't go to the back. And so the police came, I didn't wait for them. In fact, I told the police asked me where was I going. I told them I was going to Terrence City. Well, I wasn't going to Terrence City, I was going to East Birmingham. But I didn't know whether they were going to have somebody waiting on me at the end of the line. But I couldn't go to the back, I didn't have to take that chance.
So what happened?
So we got off in East Birmingham, and that was the bus driver. He got back in his seat, drove on.
So the policeman,
police asked us to go to the back. I can't go to the back.
And the police just got off.
Just got off.
So that was somewhat of a victory for you then.
Yes.
Were there others on the bus at the time?
Well, yeah.
I know that there were times when we would get on the bus and sit up front. People would say, well, why don't you come on back here where you belong? I mean, black people would say that.
Well, I had black ladies to say, come on, son, you can have my seat.
Right. Did anybody attempt to get you to come back to the back? Any blacks attempt to get you to come back to the back?
I don't remember whether it was that time or not, but I walked the park a couple of times. I don't know, it was just something that I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't go back to the back. In fact, I used to, my dad worked at Alabama by product, and so the company doctors were down in Terrence City, and we used to have to go in through the back to go to the doctor's office. Whites were going through the front. So for a long time, if I just got sick, I just wouldn't go to the doctor. But this time I had a cold, so I had lingered on so long, so I went back down there and went in through the front door, and they told me, they said, well, you have to go to the back. I just couldn't go back in no more backs. So they said, well, they wasn't going to take me if I was a new, they come here all my life, So it was just something that I just couldn't go to the back there.
So did they take you?
I left because they insisted on me going to the back. I just left. At that point, I wouldn't want them to wait on me. At that point,
No. Tell them what they was doing.
Right. In fact, I later started going to my wife doctor, and he asked me who is white. He's a pretty nice guy, really nice. He asked me why did I leave the doctor that I was going to, but I didn't know that much about him. And I told him, I'd rather not say. And he said, well, it's because I'm a nice guy. He said, because I'm a nice guy, so I could go with that. But and at his office, everybody, at the same seating room and everything. But
what year are we talking about here? This is after 63, around 65.
This may have been in the 70s.
Yeah.
This probably was in the 70s.
So, where the movement was concerned, then you have to integrate the seating on the buses. Did you ever do any sit-ins at any of the stores downtown?
Well, my first involvement with that, my sister,
What's your sister's name?
My sister's Catherine Brooks. And, there were two of us, where one of us was supposed to be witness and the other one was supposed to be arrested. So my sister got arrested for sitting in one of the downtown department stores, so I was sort of a witness. That was my sort of first experience with that, but later on in the, you might call it, bigger demonstration, I was put in jail off of parading without a permit from Newberry. So that was when I went to jail for about 3 days.
So how did that transpire? Did you go to a mass meeting and you were instructed, you volunteered to become a demonstrator and they gave you any instructions? How did that operate?
Well, what had happened, I was working then and
In the barber shop?
And I just felt this strong urge. I said, well now, I know what my dad had been through. He's worked at the broad product and a lot of time he had been belittled as a man in front of my eyes,
Mm-hmm.
And so I said,
can you tell me about any incident that happened that you remember that stands out in your mind where your father had to take certain things that you just did not like?
Well, there were times when my father, like one thing, for instance, we went to buy some tires, and there was this little young white boy in Kansas City, and my father was saying yes sir and no sir to him, And I had problems with that. I said, now, Dad acting like a Tom, But then I found later that was just a tactic that he had to use during that time. Because there were other instances where, he stood up pretty strong, But,
Give me an example of when he stood up.
well, there was a furniture store that he had bought furniture from in the same place down in Kansas City. And this where he had bought these tiles from in Kansas City, And so in this furniture store, they would have a white guy coming around collecting, And so this white guy came around collecting, and my dad, told him, get off our porch. He know the way to the store. He didn't need nobody coming to the store. This kind of guy, I said, he's not afraid of this guy, And this guy was maybe 25, 30 or something like that, And my dad had talked up to him, but as a 16-year-old, he had been saying yes sir and no sir, trying to get this credit, to get these ties, And so I found out then that he really wasn't afraid. It was just what he thought he had to do to get what he wanted.
So you saw that, and that put your father in high esteem in your mind as a result of that activity.
Right.
By the same token. Yes, go ahead.
But then there were other situations where my father would ask me to go and pay the bill where he had, they wouldn't give him a balance, on the bills, And when I go down, they try not to give me a balance on the bills. They be buying furniture and stuff, and they would get prepared for it. I wouldn't give them the balance on it.
Never tell them what they owe.
Never tell them what they owe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take it.
So when you then got involved in the sit-ins, how did that evolve? Did you go to mass meetings?
Yes.
You attended mass meetings
Right.
often?
Not real often. But what happened in this instance, how I got involved, how in the parade without a permit, a lot of kids were going to jail, and I was working at the sportsman barber shop, and they were spraying water on little teenagers. So I felt a strong urge to be a part of it. I said, well, I can't let this go on and not be a part of it. And so I was working for Mr. Ed Young at the time, and so I asked him, would it be okay if I went to jail? Because I didn't want to just go out and demonstrate. I wanted to go to jail to show my support, And so I did, and so went down to 16th Street Baptist Church, and that was a Reverend Bell. And Reverend Bell was one of I think he was called the lieutenant. He would tell us how to respond and what to say and what not to say and all that. And so at that point, I told him that I think I was about 20, 21 or something like that too. And I told him I wanted to go to jail. I told him I wanted to. I was working for black people, and so I didn't have to worry about nobody losing my job. And so I felt like a lot of other black people who wanted to participate couldn't because they were afraid of losing their job. Black people supported me, so I wanted to do that to support them.
And then you went down to the church, and they instructed you what to do. How large a group were you with?
Well, there may have been about, in the group that I was in, maybe about 6, 7, 8.
And how long did you demonstrate?
Wasn't that long. Just by the time we got started, they picked us up.
Tell me about the circumstances of the arrest.
Well, the policemen were very rude. They called us all kind of niggas and sissies, and they put us in the back of the paddy wagon, and they went down the bumpy street, and they could go down and throw us all kind of weird. But for the reason why we were so many black people had been in jail, I was going to jail because I wanted to go. It didn't bother me. It didn't hurt people. When it did hurt, but it didn't.
Where did they take you?
It took us to the city jail.
To the jail. On the south side?
Right.
And how long were you there?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think we was in jail for about 3 days. But they had instructed us not to just give our name. Let's see, I think it was name and address. Name. I don't remember if it was address or not. But anyway, when they began to ask me about what my father worked at and everything, I said no comment. So at that point, they brought in other people to try to make me tell what my father worked at. And I don't think I gave them my address. I think I just may have gave them my name or gave them my address. And so they locked me up in what they call the drunk tank for that.
With others? Were others in?
No, I was the only one. The only somebody that was in the other tank was drunk. And so I wondered what had happened. Everybody, I don't know why they just put me over there. Maybe everybody else told them what they want to know. I don't know. For all I knew, I was the only somebody over there. I could talk with them, sort of like we were little vulnerable. But I was the only demonstrator that was over in the drunk tank. There was a little cell, and they had a little iron seat there that was about 4 by 4.
And that's where you stayed the entire time?
Well, it was just really overnight. The next morning, that morning when some of them asked me when they had eaten, they asked me had I had anything to eat. They hadn't given me anything to eat, so they went to protesting and everything. But before then, what happened that night, when the shift changed, they brought other policemen in and they pointed me out. And they said, put this nigga here and throw away the key.
Were you afraid?
Oh, yeah. I was pretty afraid.
Did you think that they were going to abuse you?
In my neighborhood, when we used to see, like when the new cars came out, and they had 2 headlights and policemen, they were changing cars, we would get on an off street. We would try to avoid coming in contact with the police. And some instant they would come up to you and you had to stick your head in the woman and roll the window up on you. Play this game or good cop, bad cop. I've had policemen ask me, one of them tell me to shut up, and ask me what my name is, play the game. See, so, I've had friends to get beaten up. So,
in some
I
communities.
didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, some communities on the insignia on police cars it says, "Here to protect and serve." Now you're suggesting that the police department in Birmingham was not looked upon as being in the community to protect and serve that community?
Well, you know, in our books, the police were way friends. But I never saw it as a kid or as an adult, where the police was my friend. That was part of the reason why I was demonstrating to get some black policemen. When I was maybe like, there were times when maybe the policeman might be have a speed trap in the neighborhood or something like that. And we as little kids would sort of go up to talk to the police. They never would be friendly or anything like that. So I never looked at the police as a friend. I always looked at them as the enemy.
So that's basically the way that black people in the community viewed the police department because of the ways in which they treated people in the community also.
I'm gonna tell you a little story. I started not to mention this, but my father was a bootlegger, so we sold illegal alcohol. And I guess this may have helped me because I know that I could make a living because my father suffered with a slip disc, so a lot of times he stayed off on disability. So, but my father and mother who sold illegal alcohol, they still had respect and they sell children, teenagers. And so there was a time when my father got caught and he put money in the mailbox for the policemen to get their pay. So knowing these different things, there was no respect for them. I'm sure that there was some good policemen, but I'm just talking about, to me, it's just like a little kid. You see a little puddle of water and it look large to you, but later in life, when you grow up and you go back and you say, this was a little water, So I just didn't come in contact with any policeman who treated me or anybody else I know decent. I'm sorry to say it because I believe in the brotherhood of mankind. I'm Catholic, and so my minister is white. I call him father and call his sister truly mean that. As I said, I believe in the brotherhood of mankind, but I see what I see, and I didn't see it.
This was Birmingham, Alabama.
Right.
Birmingham, Alabama is supposedly the most segregated big city in the country. And the authorities act in that manner in most cases.
It was keeping things under control. I guess that's what they had to do to keep control.
The movement was one that, of course, the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, it was organized by Shuttlesworth and other ministers that sort of set the tone for Birmingham from 1956 to about 1963. In 63, during the demonstrations, it had been stated that Martin Luther King came into 4th Avenue District and would go to various pool halls and barbershops. Did you ever have the occasion to meet him in that regard?
The only time that I saw Dr. King was when they bombed the Major Gaston's Hotel. I think that I saw him speak at different, church. But I didn't see him. I was working in the area at that time. I heard about he had been down to the pool and all that stuff and all that. But who I had in contact with was Shuttleworth. Shuttleworth. He was a man. He was a brave man. all I needed was know that he was a part of it. I was ready. I didn't mind Dr. King, but Reverend Shirley was my hero.
He was a leader of the movement here in Birmingham.
Right.
Do you remember when the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed?
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Well, mostly what I remember was my wife was sort of light complexion. And when that happened, I don't remember who it was, but someone told me, said, Lewis, tell your wife not to be driving out through there because, you know, they throwing, they might mistake your wife for being white, you know. And that's what kind of sticks in my mind about that is the, you know, it's bad about the kids and things getting killed and all that, you know. I didn't pick it going on from, you know, I believed in nonviolence as Dr. King. Yeah, I was sort of convinced that nonviolence was the way to go. Not to say that I would still believe in defending myself, but I believe that nonviolence was the weapon. It was a weapon. And I felt like that it was the most effective weapon.
You said that you saw Dr. King the night that Asia Gas Motel was bombed. Were you out on the streets that night?
Well, yes, what had happened, I was out in Liberty supermarket, and when the bomb went off, we heard it from inside the supermarket. It sounded like a bomb had dropped on the top of Liberty supermarket, and so we went down. Co-worker and I, we went down.
What did you see when you got there?
Well, I saw policemen who and people standing around. And then later, there was a lady, and she was crying, and this lady actually got people to start throwing at the police. She stated that, you know, she called the men, and she called us kind of some names, you know, said Daddy already, that she was saying that the policeman was the one that did.
What kind of name she called?
I don't, you know, well, it was sort of putting us down as black men, you know. And so, but I don't just recall just what words that she used. She was pretty excited, you know. And so at that point, some of the people started throwing at the police, you know. And I didn't take part in throwing. That wasn't my thing. So we left, me and a friend of mine, but I had friends who were inside at the hotel. And I remember one, can't remember his name, but later on, he was kind of pushed around by some of the policemen. And I had
that night, too?
Yes, because I went to 2120 and he made a report on them being pushed around by policemen at that time, you know, after that had happened.
What was in the 2121 building that he was making?
I think it was, you know, an FBI office or something. Well, it was an FBI.
After and the demonstrations kept up throughout that year, through 63 and into 64. Were you involved at all after that particular period in demonstrations in any of the movement activity that was going on?
No, I sort of took things out on my own. You know, there are little things that, you know, for instance, when I got married, my wife had a deal down at one of the started to call the name of the store. I just called it. My wife had a deal at Ellis Jewelry Store, you know, And so she hadn't paid it, see, so we got married, so I started paying a bill. You know. At this particular time, I had a little boy, he was sweet. And in the stores then, a lot of times you would go in and white people would wait on other white people before they wait on you. And they would call you, Lewis, what they might call the white customers, Mr. by their last name. They didn't give you the same respect. You know. So I had written on the receipt, Mrs. Burks, because I had really sort of planned to tell them off and they had, sort of given me some respect. So I went into the store and paid on the bill and waiting around for a while. I used to live, I said, I'm gonna wait on you. And so she said, well, somebody wait on this boy. And so I got a little loud and I said, I'm not a boy. I said, this is a boy. I'm pointing to my son. I said, I'm a man. And she said, well, somebody wait on this man. And so I paid the bill, paid it out. And at this particular time, when you pay out a bill, they had a bell that they would ring. This bell would let you got a customer going, how you pay it out. And they tried to get you to buy something else, So I was going out of the store and Mr. Epps approached me. I'm pretty steamy now. He says, he spoke to me, how you doing? And I used to pass Mr. Epps going to work and we used to smile at each other and everything, because I had bought my first pair of clippers from Mr. Epps, And so I said, I'm not doing too well. I just been insulted in your place, And so he asked me what happened, and I proceeded to tell him what had happened, that they had called my wife, Jennifer, and they had called me boy. And he still wanted to know what was I upset about. So I told him, I said, well, if I done told you that, and you don't know what I'm upset about, there's no way for me to tell you. I said, if I was white, you wouldn't call me boy, you wouldn't call something. My wife don't associate with anybody in here that they know her, or they could call her Jennifer. I said, you got Mr. Epps. I was looking, he was a Jew. And so we had some whites, what I might call Anglo-Saxon, working for him. And so they would call you Ann and Mary and this and that. So I said, well, you people back here insulting people's calling them by their name and all this. And he said, he didn't understand. I said, well, you don't want to understand. This is the last time you see me in the store. And I was saying it loud enough for everybody else in that ear. So that was several situations like that. And, situation like that happened at Seals. Where I sort of went on a little personal crusade to get, stand up, you might say.
So you did a lot of this from an individual standpoint, rather than going through the demonstrations
So I
like
just
that.
stand up as a man myself, little incidents come up, because I felt like I could do that. In a situation happened in Seals, where they called up a policeman, and I guess the policeman was supposed to put me in jail for disturbing the peace. But as I said, I could talk without cursing, And so it came to the point where I had at Seals, I had a lock on my car trunk, taken the seals, and when I went back, they gave me the wrong lock. And so my mechanic said, this is the wrong lock, so I took it back. And in the lock department, they said, well, how do you know it's the right one? I said, because my mechanic told me it was. And they asked me, was he a licensed mechanic? And for me, that wasn't necessary. They said, well, is he a licensed mechanic? Because I know some mechanic that they had out in their garage, and they wasn't licensed. In fact, I know they had a mechanic who was white. And we had a conversation, so he wasn't licensed. But my mechanic was licensed. He had finished law from state and mechanic. And I told him, I said, well, we don't have to go through all of this. I said, let me talk to somebody else. So I went and talked to the supervisor. Carried the supervisor back, we went back down to him. when I got around with the supervisor, they started teaming up on me, you know. So in this process, we down there talking. Someone called the police, you know, and they come up. So I told him, I said, look, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I'll leave out your store. I will come back. I said, but if I'm right, fix my lock, you know. So they asked me if I would take it somewhere and they'll pay for it. I said, no, I said, I brought it to Seals. So you take it somewhere, wherever it needs to be taken. You know. So, you know, whenever I come into a situation like that, you know, that's what I did.
So you stood up when it became necessary, and much of that probably was due to the way that you had seen your father had to sort of cow down in some instances. And you seem to have made a determination that you were simply not going to do that.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe so.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we conclude this discussion?
Like I said, it's just really, you know, be a man, do what's right, and that's it. Everybody just, everybody looking for an answer, but the answer is just doing what's right. Simple.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. Just do what's right.
Mr. Burks, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. You've been very, very helpful, and maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Okay.